Welcome to the hour of the time. I'm William Cooper. Once again, make sure you have pen and paper by your side. For tonight, we resume your education into who and what and why, what they believe. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, as I impart this knowledge to you, it does not mean that I believe any of it. I hope you understand that. Some fanatic called my home today and said that in last night's broadcast I had attacked the Christian religion. Well, folks, those of you who know me can imagine my reply. With the explorations in the Sudan region of Africa of the ruins of Napata, the ancient capital of Ethiopia, which is the Cush of the Old Testament, bringing to light an ancient temple of Amun containing a huge, very large, huge Masonic altar. And with archaeologists getting ready to renew their explorations in Palestine and the Euphrates Valley, antiquarians expect further additions to the vast mass of evidence of the worldwide spread of primitive Freemasonry, which concealed, ladies and gentlemen, in its rites, symbols and ceremonies, the teaching and belief in the grand architect and great geometrician of the universe, a one and supreme God. But as I told you before, not, as many of you might believe who have been initiated into the lodge in the lower levels, not the God of the Bible. No, this God is a pantheistic God, as you will find out as we proceed. And not only a pantheistic God, well, all will be made clear. We can expect the explorations eventually to bring to light a lot of new material that will link the mound builders of the Mississippi Valley, the Mayas of the Yucatan, the ancient Egyptians, and the Chaldees, ladies and gentlemen, into one distinctly primitive brotherhood. And if you follow the thread, you will find that it leads right up to the present day. You see, the illumined ones believe that Freemasonry is the parent of all religion, the original worldwide cosmic gnosis, diffused in ancient times to the uttermost ends of the earth, scattered, as it were. Freemasonry, they believe, is the Pompeii of prehistoric science. And indeed it is, if you understand that it's prehistoric science and has no basis in actual science at all. All of the Masonic ritual, its Egyptian signs, its Chaldean grips, its Sanskrit passwords, its ancient Hebrew symbols, its Kabbalistic allusions, and its historical records are supremely scientific in an ancient way, and is a survival through long ages, ladies and gentlemen, by various underground channels of the knowledge of the universe, which was gained by Sabian astronomers from the temple tops of Chaldea, India, and China, and recorded by the equally learned geometers and mathematicians of the ancient Orient. It was this knowledge, concealed within the Brotherhood, that enabled them to build the gigantic sundials, such as that at Stonehenge in England. The two pillars of masonry today are the same as those which stood before the Temple of Solomon, erected by the same building fraternity, known as the Builders, under the supervision of the priest architects who built the Sun Temple at Tyre, before which similar pillars stood. They are the very same pillars as those that stood before the ancient temples in America when Cortez gazed in wonder on the civilization of the Aztecs and then set out to destroy them. They are the very same pillars that fixed the solstitial points in the first crude circles of stone, with a central stone representing the sun, and the same pillars which became the temple of Janus among the Romans, the totem poles of modern savages, and the Jachin and Boas of European cathedrals. You see, the key to the entire secret system is to be found in the ancient method preserved from ages long anterior to their reputed time by the Israelites of using identical characters for letters and numbers, a system called gematria, which I've discussed before, notably in the series which we called the Mystery Schools, or the Mystery Babylon series. Gematria. And upon this system, which a simple mathematical formula 10-5-6-5 is shown to be the basic source of all manifested existence, that formula, when presented in the Hebrew letters corresponding to the numbers being Jod, Ha, Veh, or in English JHVH, or Yahweh, or Jehovah. You see, my research has revealed the presence of an esoteric means hidden, secret, or mystery Jehovah worship throughout the entire ancient world is the basis of all of the outwardly pantheistic cults. Not the God of the Bible, but a pantheistic God. The real knowledge being concealed from the mass, or what they call the profane, by the priesthood and rulers, because they claim it was too high for them to grasp. But the truth is, this hidden knowledge was used to control them throughout the ages. The worship of the great first principle, defined and also hidden by the mathematical Jehovah glyph, and you don't know what I'm talking about yet, so don't form any premature conclusions, was at one time spread over the whole expanse of anciently civilized America, whether represented by the vanished race of mound builders of our own United States or the perished races of Mexico, Central and South America. And this latter wonderful fact may as readily be verified by the visitor to such a purely American collection as that in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, or the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, as by the digger in Euphrates mud or Egyptian sands. For the proof stands out once you understand the symbols. The crowning secret of the ancients, as well as of our own time, is that the study of the structural proportions of our universe as evinced in lines of force and direction, cyclic time periods, celestial areas, and visible parts, reveals, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that it is of definite form, perfectly balanced proportion, and just such a synthesis of the principles of pure geometry as to show that the features exhibited are from the same causative source as that which geometrizes the snowflake, the crystal, and the flower blossom. Hence the expression used in Freemasonry of the grand architect and the great geometrician of the universe. The ancient Egyptians adopted as the key to this great cosmic philosophy the famous Pythagorean triangle of proportions 3 by 4 by 5. Proportions which is the basis of the celebrated 47th proposition of Euclid. The understanding of this 47th proposition of Euclid is an absolute requirement of members of the Brotherhood. They called the three sides Osiris, Isis, and Horus, considering the first two as spirit and matter and the latter as nature evolved from the wedding of the other two. In other words, the doctrine, the church, and the full body of initiates, the practice of it all. And this triangle, represented as the eye of Horus and typifying the sun, became the all-seeing eye of Freemasonry, and it is clearly visible on the reverse of the Great Seal of the United States of America on every single $1 bill that you have in your wallets right this very moment. The value of the Hebrew letters in the famous triangle is 543, or 543, ladies and gentlemen, which is half of an oblong of 3 times 4. The other half of which, also shown, is 345. The sum of both equals 888, and it is the value of the letters in the Greek New Testament name J-E-S-O-U-S, Jesus. An oblong of 3 by 4 contains 3 of 4 by 9, and vice versa. I know this is a little difficult for some of you to understand, and you're going to have to do some study, for it took me years to understand it. The oblong of 4 by 9 was represented symbolically as the Atef crown on the head of the Egyptian sun god Re, or Ra, whose name really means light. Light. And from this simple proportion alone, according to the methods of the ancient Egyptians, can be at once correctly delineated all the main physical features of our universe in absolutely correct astronomical proportions, and in so doing has evolved a sacred ancient symbol, the trapezoid, of 10, 5, 6, 5 proportions, which became known as JHVH among the Jews, Jehovah or Yahweh, IHOH in Phoenicia, IHUH in Chaldea, HUHI in Egypt, Oihahu in India, Hohai and Fohai in China, that's H-O-H-I and F-O-H-I, and Iowa in ancient America, I-O-W-A, Iowa. We find this symbol, the Jehovah symbol, as the shoulders and arms of Osiris as he judges the souls in Amenti, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and as the apron worn by the mysterious stone colossi of Quirigua, Guatemala, copies of which are in our own American Museum of Natural History. Remember, this is an apron. And it becomes a little more clear as we go along. We find the Masonic keystone to be not merely an architectural requisite, but the angle of exactly 23 1/2 degrees, or the correct inclination of the axis of the earth to the pole of the ecliptic, and to embody the vertical section of the Great Pyramid of Giza 4 times repeated. We find the little clay idols of the departed aboriginal races of Colombia, South America, decorated with the geometrical glyphs of this secret order, the ornaments of the robes of the ancient Inca priests in Peru. But exemplifications of the same sacred figures and the amulets of the Mayas and Toltecs in Mexico are also engraved with them. That there must have been some worldwide organization to distribute these symbols in ancient and prehistoric times is evinced by the fact that by common consent the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Mexicans constructed pyramids, which as shown by the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt and the Teocalli of Chichen Itza, Yucatan, as leading examples, were component parts of a single geometrical problem, the key to which is the simple Masonic apron as worn today, and the graphic symbol of which covenant is still preserved as a cosmic figure among the Hopi Indians right here in the state of Arizona. In discussing the Masonic keystone, Mr. Higgins displayed examples picked up in his travel from China, India, ancient Tyre, Egypt, and Palestine that were all cut on the same exact angle of 23½ degrees. But perhaps his most precious specimens were several black serpentine amulets from Yucatan and Central America, more than 3,000 years old, that displayed the keystone and also the inverted Tau cross, so familiar to Masonic brothers in their lodge work. In pointing out the triangle of equal areas on the forehead of the amulet and the keystone nose, Mr. Higgins drew attention to the fact that the Jewish worshiper today describes with his fingers the triangle in the same place when making his invocation on the Day of Atonement. Another very rare specimen was an early Akkadian or Hittite seal expressing a triangle with 3 Masonic dots and the sacred proportions of 3 by 4 and 4 by 5, a total of 16, meaning Yah, or J-A-H, which means the universe. Now, while these keystones are very valuable in proving the contention that Freemasonry was widespread even in prehistoric times, I consider the Masonic apron preeminent as the symbol of the hidden mysteries of Masonry. It, too, is based upon the Pythagorean triangle, which, as I said earlier, was used to conceal the mysteries of the Egyptian religion. The priests knew that the letters I, O, H, or J, V, H, which were publicly applied to the sides of the triangle and called Isis, Osiris, and Horus, were the secret mathematical formulae which they considered the key to the universe. Today you may see this miniature keystone hanging from necklaces of prominent Freemasons, sometimes prominent politicians, rampant in the New Age movement. If you will read a good book on mythology, the story of the death of Osiris, slain by his brother Typhon, and the long search for his mutilated body by his disconsolate widow, Isis, you will eventually understand, especially if you have studied the mysteries, how the hope of humanity was fixed on the widow's son. Isis, of course, was the widow. Horus was the widow's son. Now, if Osiris was the doctrine, and the doctrine was murdered, killed, the church was left as the widow, widowed by the doctrine. The word was lost, the lost word of Freemasonry. Her son, the initiates, or the sons of the widow, were then, ladies and gentlemen, left without a doctrine. These were the full body of initiates. So the hope of humanity at that time was fixed upon the widow's son, the youthful spring sun god, H-U-R-A-M, or Huram, as his name was abbreviated, whose birth also constituted the resurrection of his father, Osiris, with whom he was identified. The development of the very famous Pythagorean triangle also forms the triangle that is the base of the Masonic Tau cross. The multiplication of the Pythagorean triangle by 4 gives the base for the Magian's philosophy and develops the form of the Masonic apron, just as worn today in the lodge room. It is the 64 square that I refer to. In this square, the familiar checkerboard also has hidden within it the exact geometrical proportions of the Giza pyramid. Many of you have a checkerboard in your home. Perhaps the most interesting Egyptian cut that I have is that showing Pharaoh invested with the triangular Masonic apron, holding in his right hand the grand Masonic emblem and the last grade attained, the Ankh cross, in Masonic communication with one of that order whose head is covered with a mask representing the head of the god Thoth. Now, when you examine the old Egyptian documents or pictures of such, they reveal the fact that the apron is the badge of all the gods, kings, hierophants, and priests engaged in the rites of public worship and ruling of the masses, and the apron of the ordinary celebrant appears to be a triangle of white cloth suspended from the waist in front and pinned at the corners to the tunic at each side. In the case of the Grand Master, the apron is very elaborate in design. The figures you see represent the rising and setting sun in the lower corners and the sun at meridian. The rays of the sun are so directed as to describe a regular progression of geometrical angles, such as seen on a gnomon. And over the sun apron is worn the serpent apron. The modern Masonic apron, as worn in lodge and chapter, has descended intact in every exact particular from these ancient brethren of the square and compass. Your ignorantly conceived ideas that Freemasonry began in some lodge in England during the medieval times. The Brotherhood is as old as man. It can be readily shown that the secret of the apron resides entirely in its proportions, and showed by a diagram that they were based on a triangle having an apex of exactly 54 degrees and two bottom angles of 63 degrees each. It was said that these two numbers were both eminently sacred Masonic numerals belonging to the, and remember I told you this before, belonging to the nine, our 3 times 3 series. It can be demonstrated that the proportions of the Egyptian pyramids were all concealed in the same geometrical figure upon which the Masonic apron was constructed, and from the cases of relics brought out several amulet aprons that were true in angle and indicated by dots or indentations the very true same proportions. There's a copy that came from a Peruvian vase which shows a priest of the Incas carrying a staff with a 6-pointed star in one hand and holding a Masonic apron in the other. This figure, folks, which may be seen in the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, is displayed throughout the Andean ruins, or modifications of the apron are run into borders around the Incan pottery. Maybe the very best example in America is that found on the statues and little clay images of the ancient Mayas, which litter the jungle forest of the Yucatan on the sites of the ruined cities. These images, shown by specimens, are all clothed as master masons in the very same apron as the Egyptian kings and priests, and point irrefutably to a universal knowledge of secrets behind the square and compass. And it was this knowledge that was used to subdue the masses and make government work. We see thus indicated throughout the world, ladies and gentlemen, the Masonic Brotherhood known as the Illuminati, those who are illumined collectively, known as the Brotherhood, known as the Sons of Light, known as the Sons of the Widow, or the Widow's Sons, erected thousands of years prior to any civilization of which we have any present record, to the same ever-living God whom we worship and reverence as the great architect of the universe. Today, around the world, in the lodges of all the brotherhoods, by whatever name, by whatever occupation, it is the same. it is not the same God that we worship in the Bible, whether the followers of Muhammad, the Christians, the Jews, except some Jews who subscribe to the Kabbalistic teachings. They know the true meaning. Through the mists, ladies and gentlemen, of antiquity loomed the history, the monuments, and the crumbling ruins of the vast Mesopotamian empires, all so interrelated that historians find it hard at times to distinguish between legend and fact. But there are still intelligible, despite the beating of the winds and rains, carved in stone or engraved on tablets, buried in the ruins of the temples, evidences that Freemasonic craftsmen met in lodges then just as they do today.